Hello and welcome to this quick video. This quick video is how I have modified the lights underneath my MenaceRC Penguin to be controllable from the radio. Now this isn't a particularly tricky thing to do. All you need is one of the MenaceRC switches. Now the MenaceRC switches come in a couple of different versions. I tend to have the older version here, so I've had to do it one way. However, there are newer versions of the switches. If you're buying one now, it'll come with an extra little trick that would actually have made this setup a lot easier. And I'll show you how to use both of the switches to do what I've just showed you. Now the switch that I'm using looks like this one here. This is actually the old style, the version 1 I guess you'd call it, where it just plugs into something that you can control via a PWM signal, and then it basically connects these two pads together when you get a high signal. That's all there is. However, if you look in the manual shows you a slightly different version. If I zoom in here, you can actually see that the new switches have an extra little pad, and that actually puts out the 5 volts, which is perfect for 5 volt LEDs. Unfortunately, I didn't have one of those, but if I'd have had one, the wiring would have been even easier and the job would have been even quicker. This only takes about 10 minutes, including setting up a channel on your radio and adding an extra little bit of stuff in INAV. So let's talk about what the LEDs are wired like already. These are 5 volt LEDs and they're just plugging into the flight controller via a standard servo cable. Nothing particularly complicated, nothing particularly fancy, but because it's 5 volts it gets really easy, and we have 2 choices with the modern MenaceRC RC switch. However, it doesn't need to be limited to 5 volts. You could switch anything with these switches so long as it's under the specs for the maximum voltage and the maximum current, and I've seen these being used in all kinds of things, remote control cars, boats, planes, not just for switching little LEDs like this, but also for turning on and off things like smoker units in RC trucks. So what do we need to do? Where do we need to put the switch in order for it to work? Well, what we need to do is we need to install it like this. Again, I'm using the older style that doesn't have that extra pad for 5 volts. So what you have to do is cut the negative wire and solder it onto the 2 pads. Interestingly, and the big thing you need to remember, is the pad that's got ground written on it needs to be connected to the ground pin of the supply. It's this way round. If you swap these 2 leads or you try and put it in the positive lead, it won't work, and that is one of the reasons I'm making this video, because so many people get that wrong. But once you've got it like this, we can then plug this cable back in where it came from, which is going to supply the ground of 5 volts, and then we can plug this into a spare PWM output on the flight controller and use that to then turn this switch on and off, which will complete the circuit and the LEDs will come on. This is the way that I've got it set up with mine. However, if we were lucky enough to have one of the newer switches, I just don't happen to have any in my spares bin, then we can do even simpler wiring. We don't need 2 connections, because what you can do is you would wire it up like this. You just plug the radio control switch into the output we're going to configure with INAV, and then you would solder the ground wire onto the switch pad and the 5 volts supply that's going to be switched on to this extra plus V pad that's here, and this is the thing that isn't on mine. Once you've done the wiring, then what we need to do is go onto the radio and add another channel. I would add it onto the next channel, just happens to be channel 10 for me, and I've set it up on a switch that I'm not using for anything else, so flicking that switch is going to turn the LEDs on and off. So what do we do now in INAV? Because we need to connect that channel 10 to something in the output. Well, all you need to do is go into the mixer tab, go down to the bottom and add a new rule, and then say that you just want it to output channel 10, and INAV will forward the channel 10 signal it hears straight onto that output. This is an incredibly powerful way to manage stuff and to control PWM controlled stuff using a flight controller if you're only having a little S-bus receiver in your model. Then we need to plug everything back together. So in this picture you can see that I've plugged the power cable for the LEDs back where it was, and I've plugged the radio control switch into the next output on the flight controller, and that's the one that we've just set up in the mixer tab. And with everything set up, plug in the battery, and now I can control everything with a switch on the radio. The other cool thing about this is that now it's controlled by INAV. We could also do funky stuff like use logical conditions and logical switches essentially in INAV to make the LEDs come on when specific things happen, maybe when a flight mode is selected or a return to home or whatever it is. But I thought I'd very quickly make this video for those of you that occasionally get in touch struggling to use the MenaceRC switch. There are two ways with the modern ones you'll be ordering now. It's really easy. All you have to do is you just have to wire it up like this and just plug that one lead into the output in INAV that's going to output the channel on the radio. But if you have the older style like I have here, then just wire it like this, but be super careful about making sure the ground pad is connected to the ground, and then it should work absolutely fine. Thank you for watching the video. If you watch my videos and find them useful, then please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel a lot. If you really like what I'm doing here, you can become a Patreon and support the time I spend helping others and get access to lots of exclusive benefits. Link is in the video description. Remember that all the videos on the channel are organized into playlists, so you can easily use those playlists to find all the videos on a subject that you are interested in. Add Painless360 to your searches on Google and YouTube, and it'll help you find my content for any particular topic. Thanks again for watching, and as always, happy flying.